The tragic story behind David Copperfield, The Dark Truth of Charles Dickens' masterpiece. Imagine a young boy, abandoned, overworked, and struggling to survive in a harsh world. A child who faces cruelty, hunger, and loss at every turn, only to rise above it all. This isn't just the story of David Copperfield. It was the real life of Charles Dickens. David Copperfield is often called Dickens' most personal novel. But behind its pages lies a tragic reality, one filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and childhood suffering that haunted Dickens for the rest of his life. Today, we uncover the dark truth behind David Copperfield, and how one of the greatest novels of all time was born from unimaginable pain. Chapter 1: A Childhood Stolen. Before he became a literary legend, Charles Dickens was just a boy living in London, a boy whose life was filled with poverty and despair. At just 12 years old, Dickens' life changed forever. His father, John Dickens, was arrested for unpaid debts and sent to Marshalsea debtors' prison. In those days, entire families often lived in prison alongside the debtor. But Charles was sent away, forced to survive on his own. He was taken out of school and sent to work in a blacking factory, where he spent long hours gluing labels on bottles of shoe polish. The conditions were horrific, rats crawled around him. The air was thick with chemicals, and the factory owner treated him like dirt. It was backbreaking work for a child, and the pay was barely enough to survive. No one came to save him. Sound familiar? This painful period of his life became the inspiration for David Copperfield, where the young hero is forced into child labor at Murdstone and Grinby's warehouse, a direct mirror of Dickens' real-life suffering. Chapter 2: Betrayal by his own family. While Dickens slaved away at the factory, his mother, Elizabeth Dickens, made a choice that broke his heart forever. Even after John Dickens was released from prison, she refused to take Charles out of the factory. To her, the family needed the money more than her son needed an education. For Charles, this was the ultimate betrayal. He had dreamed of returning to school, escaping the filth and cruelty of the factory. Instead, he felt abandoned. Later in life, Dickens would never forgive his mother for this decision. He would use her as the model for cruel, foolish, and neglectful mothers in many of his novels, including Mrs. Nickleby in Nicholas Nickleby and the Heartless, Mrs. Copperfield in David Copperfield. The novel became his way of rewriting his past, giving David Copperfield the justice that Charles himself never received. Chapter 3: Love, Loss, and Heartbreak. Like David Copperfield, Dickens also experienced painful love stories in his youth. His first true love, Maria Beadnell, was the daughter of a rich banker. Dickens adored her, but her family thought he was too poor and unworthy. They mocked his ambitions and sent Maria away to break his heart. He later used this heartbreak to create the character of Dora Spenlow in David Copperfield, a beautiful but spoiled girl whom David loves deeply, only to realize they are not meant to be. Later in life, Dickens married Catherine Hogarth, but the marriage was far from happy. He grew distant and even fell in love with a much younger actress, Ellen Ternan. Like David Copperfield, Dickens learned the hard way that love doesn't always lead to happiness. Chapter 4: The Dark Side of Success. David Copperfield was published in 1850, and it became an instant success. But fame didn't bring Dickens peace, it only added to his struggles. As he grew more famous, his marriage with Catherine collapsed. He blamed her for being a bad mother and publicly humiliated her. Eventually, he forced her to leave their home, keeping their 10 children away from her. Even though he wrote about kindness and justice, his personal life was full of cruelty and contradictions. He became obsessed with controlling his public image, rewriting his past to appear as a perfect self-made man. But deep down, the scars of his childhood never faded. Chapter 5: The Legacy of Pain and Redemption. Despite his flaws, David Copperfield remains one of the greatest novels ever written. It was a story of survival, of resilience, and of turning suffering into strength. Dickens took his darkest memories and transformed them into literature that changed the world. His novel exposed the horrors of child labor, poverty, and injustice, leading to real changes in society. But perhaps the greatest tragedy is that, even after all his success, Charles Dickens never truly healed from his past. In the end, David Copperfield wasn't just a novel, it was Dickens' attempt to rewrite his own life, giving his fictional self the happiness and justice that he never found in reality. Charles Dickens turned pain into power. David Copperfield is more than just a novel, it's a cry for justice, a tribute to childhood innocence lost, and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But behind the brilliance of the book lies a tragic truth, one that reminds us that even the greatest storytellers are haunted by their own past. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible untold stories from history and literature.